This is a router plane, and even the most hand tool phobic people on the planet can use one of these to help dial in joinery and clean up after your power tools. It's great for dialing in joinery, and let me show you 7 ways to use a router plane that's gonna make you a better woodworker. So what exactly does a router plane do? Well, it references off the bottom, much like a router, but it has a lot more uses than just a router. It references off of a surface and brings another surface coplanar. So that is very, very useful when you're dialing in things like tenon, mortises, bridal joints, half laps, everything, dados, grooves, they're fantastic. Just like with any other tool, you want to take small bites. You know, a router, you take small bites, same thing with a router plane. And if you take big bites like this, it's going to cut down on accuracy and make it really tough on the tool. So you want to take about a 30-second at a time, just small passes, just like a hand plane. Let me show you what that looks like. Now, just like with any other hand plane, you want to watch your grain direction and your exit. So what that means is you can see here when I was showing you taking too big of a bite, I was actually getting tear out. And even when I was doing small amounts, I was getting tear out. So that may mean that I need to come the opposite way to cut this. And I'm going to get a lot better cuts this way. That also means when you're going across the grain, you really want to watch your exit. So I would never want to exit all the way through this board because you're going to get tear out here because we're going across the grain. So you want to come in from the other side and clean it up this way. Another great little tip for this is when you're going cross grain, you want to pivot into your cuts. Sometimes coming in just like this is really tough on a board. So it helps if you pivot in just like this. It's also going to help you keep a nice solid reference area. One of the classic uses for a router plane is Rabbets, Dados, and grooves. And there's a couple ways you can do this. One, you know, your board may be bowed a little bit, so there's a high spot in the middle when you cut that dado on your table saw. A lot of times dado stacks will leave like tooth marks where you get that little bit of a wavy surface. If you're using a single blade to cut a dado, which I know a lot of people will do, they don't use a dado stack, this is a great way to clean it up. But it's great for dialing it in. You can do that a couple of ways. Let's say you're sticking a piece of walnut plywood in here, you're building a credenza, and this is where the back fits in. And it's just a little bit too shallow. You can go down to the bottom of your dado and just go a little bit extra and clean it up till it fits just right. Or with our router plane, it's really cool. You can set 0. So I've set 0 here, and I'm going to adjust this little guy here right to my 0 mark. And let's say I wanted to cut a 1/2 inch, I can use, this is both metric and imperial. So if you wanted to do, what is it, 12.7 millimeters or 1/2 inch, you can just dial this in perfectly to that mark. And then you can go ahead and make your cut just like this. The other way, like I was saying, is you set it right till you find the bottom of your groove. See how the router plane just lifted up just right there? So you find that bottom, and then you can just lift it up just a little bit more, just like that. And then you can just take a cleanup pass here, just like this. And if you're careful about grain direction, you can actually use a fence attachment to just cut your own rabbet. So you just set it to where you want to go. You want to make sure you're taking light passes, and you can create your own rabbet in a board just like this, which can come in really handy, especially if you have to do stopped rabbets. So let's say you were attaching a stretcher to the top of a leg, and you didn't want to whip out your router, and you just needed a quick one. This is a great way to do it. Boom. Just like that. Use a chisel to clean this up, and you have a perfect rabbet at whatever distance it is you want to set it at. One of my favorite uses for a router plane is dialing in joinery, especially joinery that you cut on a table saw. Like, you know, a tenon, typically I'll cut a mortise with a router, and then I'll go try and fit a tenon to it on a table saw, but it's really hard to dial that in. Same thing with like half lap joints, whether they're at the end of your board or in the middle. You know, it's really hard to dial those in to get a perfect fit on the table saw, because once you go over real fast. So let me show you how I dial these in, and it helps you clean them up too, especially if it's going to be something that's visible like a through tenon. Really helps you take those saw blade marks out. So let me show you how we get this dialed in. So first things first, it's really easy when you're cutting a mortise to get the sidewalls with your chisel, but sometimes you get a little piece left on the corners that was there from your router. So a router plane is really good for getting that final little bit out of the bottom of your mortise and making sure everything is the same depth. This is also a really good opportunity to use the beveled blade because it's really good at getting in corners. What you want to do is just go all the way down to the bottom of your mortise here until the router plane just lifts up, and then you want to back it off. Now that we have the bottom of our mortise all cleaned up, it's time to fit our tenon. Now my tenon fits this way, but it doesn't fit this way. So we need to clean up the cheeks of this just a little bit at a time, and that's the beauty of a router plane, is you can take the smallest little passes at a time. Now it's the same thing for setup with this. You just want to go until your router plane, like I feel I hit bottom, just gonna go a little bit more until it lifts up. And then this is where you want to pivot into your cut. So you can come in, that's even probably a little too much there. So you want to pivot into your cut like this. You don't want to exit out the other side. You want to come in from the other side just like this. You spin it around, pivot into your cut, same thing. You want to make sure you're not tipping. And if your tenon's really long, see these holes right here? That is so you can design an auxiliary base for you. You can get a big piece of wood, drill a Forstner bit hole through it, and then just attach it with a couple screws right here. It'll give you a much bigger reference area. So then we're just going to flip it around, go the other way, add a little bit of depth to it, pivot into our cut. And the great thing about this flat blade is you can go right along the edge here without messing up your workpiece. And come in from the other way. And there we go. And look how clean that looks now. Now we're going to flip it over and go from the other side because you don't want to take too much at a time. All right, so let's check our fit here. Give it a little motivation. There we go. That's a pretty amazing fit for just a little dialing in with a router plane. It looks like maybe I got a little bit of something hung up in that bottom corner of the mortise there, but you get the point. That is an amazing fit. Let me show you how to dial in some half flaps. So same thing here. We've got a half flap. I've got the single saw blade saw marks. I used a flat top blade, but you still get little marks like that where just a little bit proud here. You can see fits good this way, a little bit proud. So let's bring it down with the router plane, taking small bites and ensuring that we don't exit out our grain and we take cross cuts. Now this is a wide one, so you really want to make sure that you are keeping your pressure down here. This would be a good chance for an auxiliary base for it. But if you are real careful, you can make sure that you get everything just right. So now we've got that all dialed in, and look at that. Boop. Perfectly flush. That is a perfect half flap joint. Last little tip, which I should have done when I was doing these half flaps, is if you want tenons to be the exact same size, let's say you're batching out a bunch of stuff, is put them together like this. The router base would have fit on there perfectly. I could have got them down at the exact same time and done the whole thing. Great little tips about tenons and half flaps if you're trying to do that. One of the wonderful things about a router plane that it's so good at, let's say you get your nice dovetailed box finish and you want to put in a lid. You got a set of nice Brusso hinges here. This is one of those things that this tool really excels at. Let me show you how this is done. So first thing you want to do, obviously, is trace out your hinge. This is not the router plane's job, but very easy to do. By the way, if you ever want really nice hardware for a box, this company, Brusso, I have no affiliation with them. They're just the only ones who make really, really good stuff, so highly recommend. You want to hit your sides with a chisel. So you do this before you start doing anything. Go right to your corner there. Give it a nice little how do you do. Another one here. Just like that. Then you're going to take a marking gauge. And you got to remember your bevel goes towards your marking gauge. So you want to actually do it from the inside of the box. Otherwise, your line that you're about to cut is going to be slanted this way. You want it to be slanted towards the middle. Just going to take it, put it right in that line. Set your marking gauge. By the way, these are also available on Cam Tools, my favorite marking gauge. We're just going to go ahead, make a nice line, making sure not to go over your corners. Now, here's the beauty of a router plane. You're going to take your blade and you're going to set it, the very edge of it, flush with your hinge, so it's perfect. Now, instead of having to readjust your marking gauge so you can't get to this line, you can now use this like a scribe. So I can see exactly where I am. I'm going to take it and scribe this line right here. So I know exactly how deep I have to go. And now, because you could get tear out if you didn't scribe that line, and also you don't want to take that big of a bite with a router plane, we're going to back this off. We're just going to really slowly, making sure we stay flat on our box, we're going to work our way. Now make sure when you get close to those chisel lines that you're being real careful. And if you get below them, every once in a while, you want to periodically come in and check with your chisel and just give it a little tiny tap. Make sure you're deep enough there, you know. Just make sure those lines are staying below where your router plane is. We're just going to come in, and if you made those lines deep enough, these fibers should just break off right where you need them to. You want to come in at an angle a little bit. We're going to get right to those corners. So there we go, perfectly flush hinge, very easy to do. This thing comes in so handy. I mean, look how clean that is. That's really hard to do with a lot of tools. There aren't a lot of tools that will get in there so perfectly flat without risking ruining your whole piece. And when you get to this point too, you've put in a ton of work. Let me show you something really cool this router plane can do that not all of them can. So check out this little trick this guy has, which is when you get into really tough to reach areas, you can actually take this off and mount it the other direction. So now you have a router plane that can reach tough to get to spots. It's really cool. You know, you can use it to get a lot further into corners and things like that. Really cool little trick. And you know what? The fence also has a cool little trick here. So this is our fence. It's got a flat spot ground into it that keeps it from twisting, but then you can also pull this fence off and mount it the other direction. And now you can do curved areas with when you just have 2 points of contact here. So if you have a curve, that's gonna be able to go around it. If you need to do like, you know, inlay around a table or anything like that, this is a great little tool. We're also gonna be coming out with other blades for these, so we'll have other blades that are coming out. So a lot of things with our router plane that are really, really cool. Some of them do it, some don't. I know the Veritas can flip around. I'm not sure about the lie-nielsen. I have to go look at mine. It's an incredible piece of kit here. I think one of the best things you can do for a router plane is make an auxiliary base. You saw in those half flaps here, I had a tough time reaching that edge. That makes a big difference when you need a lot of reference area. But a router plane is really one of the most useful things in the shop. I love mine. I had a lie-nielsen for years. I've had a Veritas, and this is the one we just came out with. They're all fabulous planes. I am partial to mine, obviously, because it's got my name on it. We did it in partnership with the greatest tool maker, I think, in the world today, Hong Dewey. He makes some amazing things. We worked on this together, and I think one of the things that we really worked on that is a big difference is this depth guide here is really, really helpful in dialing in repeated depths to a ton of accuracy. It's got both metric and imperial. And then as well as this lifting mechanism, this has 0 backlash in it. You know, everybody who's used a hand plane knows you have to spin it like 3 times before the blade starts moving. This one does not. It is really incredible how it works, and it's really, really high-end tool. So if you want to find out more about this, head over to my website. We released it last week, so I don't know if it's sold out right now, but if it isn't, it's over there for purchase, or you can sign up to be notified when we get them back in. We'll place another order as soon as we're sold out, so make sure you sign up. Also, our newsletter comes out twice a week. We've got tons of great content. I don't send anything out that doesn't have a ton of woodworking value to it. We don't spam you. And also my charity's over there, Katz-Moses Woodworkers with Disabilities. So if you want to check that out, head over to kmtools.com. Stay safe in the shop, and as always, thanks for watching.